Hi, I'm Elijah, and don't mind me, I'm just trying to rebrand myself so I can be more broadly appreciated in the world. See, have a look.
Hi, and welcome to FunGeeks, where we enjoy everyone's company from everywhere else. Thank you for listening, and now watch me enjoy this Detroit-style pizza.
I wasn't planning on the steering wheel to be a sensor, but who knows, it'll probably work out in the long run, because you all know how Europe finds Little Caesars.
Localization. Noun. The process of making something local in character or restricting it to a particular place. Also the fact of being or becoming local or fixed in a particular place. So when you hear that word, you may think of translation, which isn't wrong, but it's not right. The art of translating something is a part of localization, but 9 times out of 10, it's more than translation with a few misspellings. But in order to fully understand localization, we have to start from somewhere. This is the Bible. One way of localization that I can remember is anime released in the 90s and early 2000s for kids, with stuff like this onigiri being called a jelly donut. But that's in terms of localization for TV shows. Video game localizations? It's the same thing, but there are just a few moving parts. You can also spot this if you truly don't have a life. Welcome to my hell. Take, for example, Pac-Man, one of video game's most famous characters. However, this is a lie. Because of Japan, he was called Puck-Man. That had to be changed everywhere else because children in the 80s want to be funny and say f***. But one thing I did find out was that the ghosts in the game's names, they're completely different. There was Reddy, Pinky, Bluey, and Slowy. But in the translation, we got renamed to Inky, Blinky, Pinky, and Clyde. Pretty simple. I'm not gonna lose sleep over something like, oh, the ghost is named Clyde, oh no. But that's like a minor example of localization. Sometimes it would be changing a character's name or tone down anything frowned upon in another region. Fatal Frame Made in the Black Water. Released back on the Wii U in 2014 in Japan and 2015 everywhere else, the characters would wear sexual outfits and swimsuits next to nothing, and when it was gonna come to the US, we know how people react to seeing near-naked women. But since Nintendo was also helping with the project, they also gave some leeway to making costumes of Zelda and Samus in the game. This was only for the whole worldwide release of the game. The Japanese release, yeah, that has the explicit content that you want. Some people were mad at this, some people were befuddled. And that's kind of the most thing with most localizations. Many say it's censorship expressing outrage, but the thing is, Fatal Frame is a horror game. Would it really make that much sense to wear no clothes opposed to, clothes? I don't know, this kind of reminds me of like that whole thing where people were mad at Nintendo for like censoring Dispatch on the Nintendo Switch when really, that was the developers that did it. And at the same time, you could still buy the regular game on like PC or PlayStation 5, it didn't go anywhere. I mean, people on the internet, they like to bitch. I mean, hey, look at this. And at the same time, you could still buy the regular game on like PC or PlayStation 5. It didn't go anywhere. But hey, most of that is just done because of different norms. Usually cultural norms. In Japan, they're weighed down with more explicit stuff. I mean, you ever heard of High School DxD? However, in the US, well, they would, but they don't want to tell on themselves. You'd be damned if America gets a whiff of different explicit cultural norms. Well, you know the rules. If you're a video game not following the US cultural norms. But however, when it comes to games of the 80s and 90s, localization was at an all-time high with certain games. The box art, the story, the manual, the titles, a few sprites itself, all of it changed in places. We all know of the fact that they take a cute and friendly mascot and then edge it all up from the manual to the design, because we want people to see this and go, no, I don't want to play this, I'll look like a bitch. Now this is a game that's non-bitch worthy. Not to mention that you also have games that are easy in one country, but difficult in others or vice versa. Regional difficulty is what it's called. Most of it boils down to making aspects of the game harder with faster enemies or hazards, straight up removing codes in the game, or even not having an easy mode. And that's why Mega Man 2 is my bitch. Speaking of Mega Man is also called Rockman in Japan. Dr. Light, yeah, I'm sure that's what his name is because other countries call him Dr. Right. Contra is called Protector in Europe and changed some of the enemies into robots. Castlevania Bloodlines had the blood removed in its name and got changed to Castlevania The Next Generation. The Punch-Out character Soda Popinski was known as Vodka Drunkenstein in other countries. Star Fox has a bunch of different names in Europe. Tomba is known as Tombi in Europe. M. Bison, Vega, and Bullrog got their names switched up in the US. which with some thinking skills we can know which one was supposed to be called M. Bison. And Poison in Final Fight was a sprite of a woman, but in the US they didn't want people to beat up on a woman, so instead of changing the sprite to a man, they said Poison was a man. Sure, they don't change the game some way or another, but what about games that are what they say they are? Identity fraud. One of the most famous games that is known for this is Super Mario Bros. 2. With Super Mario Bros. 1 being a success, the game would see a sequel which was identical to the first one, but adds extra difficulty to the mix. Nintendo of America told Japan to change it, which they did by just reskinning a game called Doki Doki Panic, and then boom, Mario Bros. 2. Of course, Mario Bros. 2 in Japan was titled Super Mario Bros. 2 USA, and Super Mario Bros. 2 was subtitled The Lost Levels and came on the Super Nintendo as a part of the Mario All-Stars collection. Speaking of reskins, Dragon Power was a top-down NES game that was actually a Dragon Ball game. The reason that they changed it was because they thought nobody would care what a Dragon Ball was. But today, I'm still trying to go Super Saiyan and have seen no results. A majority of the Crazy Castle games had different cartoon characters in different regions. It's honestly a miracle that these games could come out of Japan, however, some weren't that fortunate. A majority of text-heavy games couldn't come out of Japan with the amount of work that would need to translate the entire thing. I mean, 2 whole bookcases were used to localize Dragon Quest VII. Games like Captain Rainbow or Mother 3, they don't really get to come into the US as the game's text is really daunting, which is why it's mostly up to fans to translate the work for them and port it online. And even if they get released, and if it's an NES game, chances are it has a few misspellings. Now that's bad on some merit when they mistranslate it to where it's not even the same sentence. People will just start questioning it. The Legend of Zelda Triforce Heroes was a lighthearted, don't take me serious Zelda game, in which the American localization thought it'd be a good idea to shove internet memes in there, while the European release was more serious. I mean, a game like this doesn't really merit something like Final Fantasy VII, where, I mean, there is some goofy stuff in Final Fantasy VII, so they could get away with it. Also a few mistranslations. Which also, speaking of Final Fantasy VII, most of the games before 7 didn't even come out. Final Fantasy 3 was actually Final Fantasy 6, but when Sony was publishing the game, they said, no, Final Fantasy 7 here and in Japan.
There are definitely more examples of good localization and bad localization. However, I have no time to do that because I'm still doing this video to rebrand myself. Maybe I should tone down the blood.